Whether you're in the for-profit world or the nonprofit world, allocating resources or deciding where resources are best allocated is never a simple thing. But at least in the for-profit world, you have this notion of you invest some money into some type of a project, and then hopefully some more money comes out, and then based on this, you can calculate a return on investment. But in the philanthropic world, it's not quite as simple. In the philanthropic world, you put some money into a program, some resources into a program. Instead of more money coming out, what you get in return is some level of social impact. But you have to think about, do you put your money into this project, or does the money go into another project that has a different form of social impact or different impact? How do you compare the social impact there to the social impact here? Or how do you compare the return that you're getting per dollar from a social impact point of view? And obviously, this is a very important question to us at Khan Academy. We are funded through philanthropy, so we have to make the case to philanthropists that we are one of the highest social return investments that anyone can make. And then with those resources, we also have to make decisions on where we allocate them within Khan Academy. So the focus of this video is going to be on Khan Academy's US classroom work. And we're going to do a calculation to evaluate its total dollar benefit and benefit to cost ratio. So before I get into how we're going to calculate that and the framework, I'll give you some preliminary information that we know about Khan Academy. We know that as of last October, and I'm doing this video in early 2020, we had 21 million monthly active users. These are people who took at least one learning action in the month of October. And I'm using October because that's when back to school is fully in session, and so it's a good month to look at. Now, of those 21 million, 4.2 million are teacher-directed users. Another way you could think about them is these are classroom users. Now, why am I focusing on them? Well, I said we're going to think about the total dollar benefit and benefit to cost ratio of our US classroom work. And so I'm only going to focus on this subset versus all of our monthly active users. Now, there's a lot of impact that's being generated above and beyond that, but I'm just focusing right over here. And of these teacher-directed, they are predominantly US classrooms. Now, of those 4.2 million, 1.2 million are what we call monthly very active learners, or you could say MVAL for short. And what's interesting about MVAL is that this threshold of usage, which is 120 minutes or more per month, has been associated through multiple efficacy studies with greater than expected learning outcomes. We're seeing that 120 minutes or more per month in various studies is pointing to a roughly 0.2 standard deviation improvement in student outcomes, or an effect size of 0.2. And there's reason to believe that if Khan Academy is used in the correct ways and implemented in the correct ways, the impact could be much larger than this. And this would be roughly over a year. But if we're saying that 1.2 million students are getting roughly a fifth of a standard deviation improvement over the course of a year, how do we quantify that in terms of total dollar benefit? And once again, we're not even capturing the benefit of the teacher-directed students who aren't hitting this threshold. There's some benefit there, and obviously there's a lot of benefit for the students who are also working on their own outside of classrooms or working internationally. To help us there, I'm going to use a framework from the Robin Hood Foundation. And this link right over here goes to a report that they created in 2014 to do exactly this type of thing. How do you compare different projects to understand which projects yield the highest social benefit? And what they did for education interventions is say, all right, let's think about how many kids are getting the intervention, how many kids are getting to the right level of dosage, and then what does that dosage do for the students in terms of standard deviation improvements, and how does that translate into benefit to lifetime earnings for that student? So in their methodology, they didn't think about other positive societal externalities. They're very focused on what is the benefit to that student, and in particular, to poor and underrepresented students. And what I have here is a screenshot from page 22 of this study. And you could look at some of their references right over there. But there's a lot of interesting data here. They talk about that they find that an increase of 1 standard deviation in standardized test scores produces an approximate 10% increase in students' future earnings. They also talk about estimating that for the students that they are trying to help, low-income students, students who are underrepresented, they very conservatively estimate student earnings at around $20,000. And this was based on estimates from a 2007 study, and this, of course, is a 2014 report. I'm making this video in 2020, so this would be very, very conservative today. But let's just go with what they are talking about. If we go back to the data from Khan Academy, what would this do for the future lifetime earnings for these roughly 1.2 million students? So we could say, all right, if we very, very conservatively estimate that the average annual income of these students will be $20,000 per year, and let's say they will be working for 30 years, so times 30 years, that would get you to $600,000 in lifetime earnings, very conservatively. I'll just say LE for short. Now, one possibility is you could present value this $600,000, apply some discount rate, and in some studies people have, instead of multiplying by 30, you could multiply by something like 18. But one argument is that this number will grow arguably faster than the discount rate, in which case 30 is actually might be an appropriate multiple, or it even might be conservative if this grows faster than the discount rate. But let's just go with this for simplicity. So according to the Robinhood report, a 1 standard deviation would result in a 10% improvement to earnings. We could, if we assume this goes linearly, and we're making a lot of assumptions here, most of them very conservative, a 0.2 standard deviation improvement would be a 2% in annual earnings. And so if we multiply this number, if we're looking at the lifetime, times a 2% improvement, so times 0.02, that gets us to $12,000 per student increase in lifetime earnings on an annual basis. Because once again, if these students do it for 2 years, they should get compounding effects of this standard deviation improvement. If they do it for 10 years, they should get compounding. So this is this much improvement per year. So we can multiply this number times the 1.2 million monthly very active learners that we have. And so if you multiply $12,000 times 1.2 million students, you're going to get $14.4 billion of improvement in future earnings for these students. Once again, not looking at other positive externalities, not looking at the benefit that we're able to give to students who don't fall into this category, not talking about all of the improvements that we are using our resources to improve this efficacy. Just off of this, we're getting at $14.4 billion annual total dollar benefit. Now, to calculate the benefit to cost ratio, we find the ratio between this and the amount of resources we need to do this work. And the amount of resources that we need to do this work is currently approximately 30 million per year. This is the cost. So what is the benefit to cost ratio? Well, it's going to be 14.4 billion to 30 million, which is the same thing as 480 to 1. So one way to think about it is every $1 invested in Khan Academy's U.S. classroom work has a total dollar benefit of $480. Now, some of you might be saying, this is great. This is a lot of impact using very conservative estimates. But what if your focus is on underserved students, students of color, low-income students? And there we are also focused at Khan Academy. And this is a breakdown of Khan Academy's usage compared to just the general demographics of U.S. public schools. And as you can see, if you break down by free and reduced lunch, we're actually slightly overrepresented in free and reduced lunch in our classroom usage. About 52% is majority free and reduced lunch schools. We're also overrepresented in classroom usage for students of color and also for English language learners. But if we use majority free and reduced lunch as a proxy, we could say that roughly half of this impact is happening in high need schools. And so even if you take half of this, you get a benefit to cost ratio of 240 to 1. Now, an important question is, how does that fare compared to other social programs? Well, I looked at various reports by Robinhood and other groups, and it looks like a benefit to cost ratio that is in excess of 10 to 1 is actually considered very good. And it's unusual to find projects that have a benefit to cost ratio of 20 to 1 or 30 to 1. And that makes sense. In the investing world, if you got a 100% return, that'd be amazing. And that would be a benefit to cost ratio of 2 to 1. And so in the social world, if you get a benefit of 10 to 1, that's great. 20 to 1, amazing. 31, hard to find. Here we're talking about 240 to 1 using very conservative estimates. Now, to be clear, it's impossible to have an exact measure of total dollar benefit, and it might change based on new information we get. This was based on the 0.2 effect size or 0.2 standard deviation improvement, which so far we have seen in math at the monthly very active learner level. We need to do studies on that in English and language arts, in science, and actually in various grade levels in math and in various use cases. So there's a lot of work to be done. But even if that number is safely between 100 and 1,000 to 1, it is a very, very high benefit to cost ratio.